What's up? This is The Other Map, and today we're talking to hip-hop artist Khan about the drink known in the West as Kava. So it's sort of a responsible social lubricant.
Sorta. I mean, you can definitely be irresponsible with it.
Khan's family is Indo-Fijian, and he has extensive experience serving and drinking Kava, a semi-intoxicating beverage which is growing in popularity in the United States today. We talk about what Kava is, original Kava culture, and the unregulated state of the drink in the United States. Check it out. So, Jay, what was your first experience with Kava?
I remember I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and we dropped by one of my uncle's homes. You know, more like a distant relative, but you call him uncle.
Yeah.
In the Bay Area somewhere, and we popped in real quick. It was just my dad and me and him, and he had this steel bowl out on his kitchen counter, or on his dining room table, and it had this like brown, like tannish, like liquid in there, and a coconut shell floating in there. And he like poured himself a cup and took a sip, and then I can't remember if I asked to try it or if he offered it. But I remember he asked my dad, "Hey, is it cool if he has a little shell of Kava?" And he said, "Yeah, let him have one." So he poured me up some, and I took a sip, and I was like, "Ooh, this is interesting." Kind of gave my mouth a little tingle. But yeah, that's kind of my very first like memory of Kava, like of actually using it. Because in my family, it's kind of a somewhat common practice, like you'll see it around. I am Indo-Fijian, so like I'm Indian, but my folks are from Fiji, and while in Fiji they picked up the practice of drinking Kava. So yeah,
speaking of Fiji, so like I did some research on Yelp, which is what it is, but Suva has like a huge amount of Kava bars. For people listening, Suva is the capital of Fiji, so it seems like it's like very ingrained in the culture. Is that true?
I mean, yeah, it's like part of a sacred ritual practice out there too, But the element of a bar is kind of like a more modern offshoot, I would say, of it. You know what I mean? But I'm not surprised. There's probably a lot of tourism going on over there too. But even outside of that, I'm sure a lot of people just like to go and enjoy Kava, or naguno is what we also call it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if that's an Indian term. That might be an Indian term for it. I'm not sure if that's a Fijian term.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what are Kava's different uses like in Fijian culture? Like you mentioned that it was a sacred thing, but also people kick back with it.
Yeah, there's definitely like the kickback element. But as far as like I'm aware, I'm sure there's many different like sacred ritual practices that go along with it. But there's one that I remember my dad telling me about, how in Fiji, to go to there's certain islands that if you go to it, for example, you kind of need to seek the blessing of the chief of the tribe from the island, right? Like from the indigenous Fijians. And drinking Kava with them is part of that ceremony, I guess. So, you have a shell with them, and then they give you their blessing, and it's considered like bad luck or a bad omen if you bypass that step, you know what I mean? So just to be on their island. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's it almost reminds me of like out here on Turtle Island here, when you go onto like Indian reservation or like Indian land, Native American land, that is, like there's certain rituals there too, like you would offer tobacco to the land and the people of the land and things like that. So yeah, I don't know, it just reminds me of that a little bit.
Makes sense. So how is the beverage of Kava made? Like what is the drink?
So you make it out of this powder. It's more or less like a powder, a coarse powder. It's not too fine, kind of off whitish usually. It can range to darker color too, like almost dark brown. But basically that is they get that from the root of this plant, and then they turn it into that powder and they refine it. And what you do is you make a cold brew out of it, in a big bowl, usually like in a big batch. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much, like a liter or something, or like half a liter maybe, or 3/4 of a liter. And you brew it in the cold water, and you gently kind of massage the tea bag that you put it in. And it's bigger than like what you think of, like not like a small single serving tea bag, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of massage that for like 10-15 minutes and just let the water get nice and murky. And that's how you brew it.
A batch of kava would be what was on your uncle's table, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like a kind of medium-sized steel bowl, like a mixing bowl, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that amount is pretty standard, like quick brew or batch of kava. And what's going on too, to get a little scientific with it, I guess, like when you're brewing it, what's going on is like it's releasing the kava lactones, and there's like 5 or 6 different ones. Those are like the neurotransmitter or whatever, right? Like that actually interacts with your body and your brain. And yeah, I guess there's like 6 different kinds, and each different strain of kava, you know what I mean? There's different varieties of kava, kind of like with cannabis. And like, yeah, they all feel different in that way because they have different combinations of these kava lactones or whatever. There's definitely categories in the same, the kind of like, I work in cannabis a lot, so it reminds me of cannabis in a lot of ways, where there's that kind of like indica, sativa, like there is like these broad categories for kava too. There's like waka and kava, and there's some other ones that I probably don't know about, but there are ones that like give you more of a energy boost, and then there are the ones that do bring you down a little more too, you know what I mean? So that's one element of it.
What is the plant that this root comes from?
It's called like Piper methisticum. It's like I guess that's a branch of the pepper family, right? Piper? I'm not sure.
I think, yeah, that makes sense.
It's like a shrub, right? Like it's got like, I believe it's got like green leaves above the ground, kind of like fanned out. But then they pull that out, right? And they use the roots. The roots are what they use to make kava. Gotcha.
Yeah, so when you drink kava, or when one drinks kava, you know, you said some of it, you know, for lack of a better word, brings you a little up, some a little down. What's the general feeling of kava when you drink it?
I would say that the first thing you're going to notice is you'll probably notice a tingling or a numbness on your lips and your mouth when you drink it. Like probably if it's some pretty good kava, you know, off your first or second shell, you'll just feel that numbness. And you know, from there it's like, I almost describe it, it's not too overwhelming in my opinion, unless you drink like a lot, but
yeah,
it's like pretty subtle in the way that, like, I always compare it to like smoking a cigarette. You know, like you feel something, but it's not like the end of your night. But
yeah.
It's mellowing, you know, like that's generally it. It's mellowing. It kind of cuts your anxiety. It can feel relaxing on your muscles. You know, these are some of the uses for it. You know, actually, like that's why it's kind of used in a social way too. Like it kind of eases your tongue a little bit, you know, in the way that you might talk more. Kind of like alcohol. I always describe it as like the righteous version of alcohol. Like it makes people friendly. You know, it's mellow. It's like alcohol minus a lot of the like aggressions that and demons that can come with it. But
so it's sort of a responsible social lubricant.
Sorta. I mean, you can definitely be irresponsible with it. But I mean, like, especially in the places where kava comes from, like a lot, like there is that kind of like image of the like town drunk, but they're off the kava, you know, like so that can be a thing, you know.
I mean, you can abuse anything if you try hard enough.
Yeah, and what's interesting about kava, kind of on the same, if you think about this, right, the more you drink of it, the easier it is to get drunk off of it.
Wait, the more you drink, like...
It's got a reverse tolerance.
Oh, like the tolerance.
Yeah, so instead of like, you would think with most things, the more you consume, the more you develop a tolerance and you have to consume more. But with kava, as long as it's like flowing through your system, the more your baseline kava lactone levels are up, like the more your body kind of takes on the feeling of it. So,
well, that is what it is, right? Could be good or bad.
Yeah. But like, you know, like growing up, like the way I saw it used was like, for example, I had this other uncle, like my great uncle, one of the like OGs, the generation that immigrated here to America. He always had these gastrointestinal issues. And I think damn near every night he drinks a bowl of kava because it eases his stomach. And it's like, I don't know if it's quite like an antacid, but it definitely does something to kind of just ease his stomach and like make it easier to eat food. So, you know, that's another use of it.
Yeah, you mentioned in our prep conversation that it was a medicine. You said sacred medicine. Would that be sort of like, sounds like it does a lot of things.
Yeah, I feel like that's more just like the kind of natural homeopathic use of it, more so. That's not really the sacred use.
No, for sure. No. I was just saying, like, it seems like it has a lot of uses. Like, is that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, it's kind of like a household, you know, product in Fiji, I guess.
Huh. So,
yeah, the stomach issues, if you have back pain, things like that. If you know I'd imagine too, a lot of the Fijians, like the Indo-Fijians, picked it up because they were doing a lot of field work, right? Like in the sugarcane fields and stuff. So this was a tool to like alleviate muscles and tightness and pain. So yeah, the kava definitely is effective at that.
Sick. So where is kava traditionally grown and used?
Definitely Fiji. Also Samoa, and just there's a few other like Pacific islands out there in the Oceania area.
Yeah.
I think Hawaii too. I believe they do grow kava in Hawaii.
So where is Fiji? So the people that aren't familiar with Fiji, where is that on the globe?
It is far in the middle of the Pacific. Kind of the more identifying landmarks would be Australia, New Zealand, and then like just out far from there too, sort of. But yeah, and I think it's sort of near Samoa, closer, and some other little tiny island nations over there.
Yeah,
It actually consists of a few hundred islands, or a couple hundred islands.
No way.
Like tiny ones, like really tiny ones. But there's a few main big ones. But if you count all the little ones too, you know what I mean?
So kava use is rising in the West, which is kind of weird because I looked and there are no kava lounges in Singapore that I could find, and Australia has very few. But like the US has a ton. Yeah, and it's solid in Hawaii for sure. But like Florida has a massive amount of kava lounges. It's very, very, very odd. I mean, for me, it's odd, you know?
Yeah, it's probably something that's happened in just the last, like, 10 years or so, I want to say. Relatively new. But yeah, I guess I could see that. You know, I started college in 2009, and I brought a bag of kava with me to the dorms. And, because, you know, we had it at home. So I brought some, and I introduced so many people to kava just personally. It was like a social gathering we do in my dorm. We'd all just sit on the floor, and I put on some chill like reggae or something, and I would teach people about kava, and we do it kind of the way we do it at home, you know, like drinking out of the big bowl and serving cups to everyone. Or we serve the same cup, we pass that around. That's kind of how you do it. And people loved it. A lot of people really enjoyed it, and they enjoyed the feeling of it. And I would always make sure to warn them, like if they're on antipsychotics or if they're on antidepressants, that it is a MAOI. So I think that's really important. These places should warn people about that. But anyway, I say all that to say this, that like back then, like that's where you would have probably drank it from your like Fijian homie. Like you would have a lounge to go to, and like it has become this new thing that's out here, and being opened up in like a bar setting, kind of like a lounge setting, which is kind of cool. Like, you know, I've been to one downtown here in Santa Cruz. There's a Kava bar, lounge type thing, and they have good Kava there. But it's definitely different from the traditional like way of consuming it, you know.
Yeah, we were going to talk about how it's like if you're in sobriety, like trying to quit alcohol or harder drugs, there's sort of like a search for alternatives, and it seems like a lot of people that are in, you know, a program or just getting sober will turn to something like Kava or, you know, Kratom, but yeah, I feel like it kind of cheapens it a little bit, but that is like a, you know, that is a thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like almost like, you think of it like a natural remedy in a way, because it does even operate on your brain in one way as a dopamine like imitator, right? So it gives you that satisfaction that is something that you're fighting a lot if you're an addict. And maybe that is why in the last 10 years perhaps that this Kava has grown so much here in the United States, because we do have a pretty big opioid epidemic, and I have noticed that there is definitely a subgroup of people who are seeking Kava out for that, for sure. Even at the Kava bar down here in town, like it's got a presence of folks in recovery, no doubt.
Oh yeah.
So it's interesting. I think it's definitely a better alternative. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You mentioned that it was sort of, you know, reduced anxiety and would be sort of a social thing, and then that's a lot better than drinking.
Definitely. Yeah. But there are, you know, it's interesting because it is like unregulated out here. And I think in general in most places it's unregulated. So that's kind of, I feel like, an appeal of opening it up as a business. But like,
oh, you mean like business people will open it because it's not regulated?
It's just one less barrier to opening a business, right?
True.
It's like easy to get, you know, like it's something that they can go access, that, you know, it's an alternative and can kind of cut the edge off those cravings probably. And it's like you said, a social setting, you know, where you can still kind of hang out and lounge, but there's no alcohol. So
but at the same time, that brings up sort of, you know, is it being used or appropriated by doing that?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, you know, there's always going to be like elements to it that are appropriative, you know, especially when they're in there like saying bula, which is the like, that's like how you say cheers. The Fiji.
Oh yeah. You sort of, everyone gets their glasses together and you go bula and clap.
And then you drink it.
Does that actually happen in Fiji? Or in traditional Fijian culture?
Yeah, they say bula, yeah. It's like saying salud or something, I guess. Definitely, they do. But, you know, it's just different. It's not the same in the lounge. The way that they're serving them, like, in individual shells is kind of like, that's not really traditional. And, I mean, you know, it's just a morphing practice. Everything kind of, when you put it in this, package it to be this consumable thing, it ends up always going to lose some of that tradition, right?
Yeah, there's another thing that happens. It's poured a lot at transformational festivals, so like Burning Man, Envision, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, sort of the same thing, would you say?
Yeah, totally. It is. Yeah, it's an appropriation. It like makes sense too because I mentioned earlier that kava is MAOI, which is a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. And monoamine oxidase is basically an enzyme that helps you break down certain like neurochemicals and stuff in your body. So by inhibiting monoamine oxidase, I believe what it does is it makes the effect of certain things, such as mushrooms or other psychedelics or other drugs, it makes them stronger.
Really?
Yeah, it makes them stronger, and generally it can make those things last a little longer too. So that's something to note if you are consuming kava and planning to mix that with other things like that. And the effect of it lasts for I think like a week or two. So from the time that you ingested the kava. So
if you've had kava that week and then you do, even if you're not drinking it at the time, it'll still amplify the effects of other drugs? Damn.
Yes, exactly. It has that potential, without a doubt. And I don't think it's like the strongest MAOI in the world, but it's noteworthy. So
yeah, I mean, I take an antidepressant that specifically you're not supposed to drink with kava. And you actually told me that one time that I shouldn't drink kava, and no one else had told me that. I'm sure if I went into the kava bar downtown and was just like, hey, can I have some kava, they would just give it to me.
Yeah.
But that seriously could have fucked me up.
Oh yeah, and that's why it's so interesting that it's unregulated too. I think that's what I was going to say earlier, is like because it's kind of unregulated, it seems like they don't have to tell you about these things about it like up front, which they probably should. There's a lot of people on those kinds of medications, and there's a lot of people also who experiment with other kinds of drugs.
Yeah.
So to understand how kava can interact with that is important. It's important. I always go to this website called, I'm just going to plug it real quick.
Hey, go for it.
It's called erowid.org, erowid.org. It's super informative about all forms of substances and chemicals that are psychoactive, but like in a really researched scientific way, right down to like dosing and all kinds of stuff. So
that's sick. So what was it? Erowid?
Erowid.org.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll put a link in the description to that.
For sure. They have a page on Kava as well.
Yeah, it seems like, this is off topic, but it seems like a lot of the issues that we have with drugs in the West could be solved by just people knowing what they're getting into. Like having a sort of someone to be like, don't do that, or whatever.
I think there's a definite drug culture element that fuels a lot of what we see going on here that's just different in a lot of other countries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which maybe is why, I don't know why there's so many kava lounges here versus Australia. That kind of blows my mind.
Right? Yeah, because it's right next door compared to the U.S.
Yeah, it's right there, and there's a lot more like people who would bring that practice with them immigrating to Australia too. So that's curious to me. But there's other ways to drink kava besides going to a kava bar, and I hope folks know about that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. So is there a way to drink kava responsibly outside of a bar or lounge? Like, would it be better to do that?
Well, if you're planning on drinking it, that is probably a good way you can do it in terms of it's more economical, it's cheaper, and also you'd be supporting probably somebody who comes from a community that consumes kava or, like uses kava. Like you would go to like probably a Fijian market to get a bag of kava. That they have those around, they're around the Bay Area. There's some in the Central Valley for sure.
So bigger metropolitan areas would have Fijian markets.
Yeah. Definitely. There's that wherever there's any Fijian presence. Like, I know Sacramento does as well. And yeah, I think I've even seen one down in like Marina or Monterey area. There's like a Fijian market, or you might even catch it in like a Polynesian market or something. But yeah, that would be one way to get it, and you can always make it at home. I explained how to make it earlier. It's nothing crazy.
What would you hope that the West does with kava? Like, because I mean, there are examples in history of like Maria Sabina and psilocybin mushrooms, and then now that was like a sacred medicine in Oaxaca, and now it's just a street drug. Like, what would you like to see happen with kava in those terms?
I don't know. I think I'd like for kava to just pretty much be left alone for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't. It's just another herb, I guess, like use it if you need to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think they need to, like I said earlier, like, I mean, this is just my philosophy, I guess, but the drug culture thing is definitely driven by supply and demand capitalism. And in order to create sales, you have to create sales. So you create demand. And so, if somebody wanted to really push kava and make it really big, then they will. And good luck to them, because it kind of tastes like dirt. 90% of people who try it for the first time in front of me go, it tastes like dirt water, which or like mud water. And
I've heard that too.
It kind of does, but I mean, even as a kid, I remember when I tried it, I didn't think quite that. I liked it. I thought it was pretty interesting.
I mean, shit, alcohol tastes absolutely horrible. So
Tell
it's
me
not
about
like
it. Exactly. That's my first response too. I'm like, well, you probably take shots of vodka or something crappy like that, but like somehow like this, for some people, this is just worse. They're like, nah, I'm good. Like they just don't even want it. But I personally don't think it's that bad, and I would suggest trying it out if you've never tried it before. They also have these tinctures in like health food stores and stuff, which is like extremely strong kava. It's like extract, you know what I mean? It's like instead of like flour, it's dabs, but it's like I wouldn't recommend it. I've tried it. It's hella strong. It's intense, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't need extract of it. I'd rather just make a tea. There's also this brand called Yogi Tea, I think, and they make a really nice kava tea. It's like they blend kava in with a few other herbs, and you can brew it hot. And I really enjoy that tea. Actually, it's nice for like helping you get to sleep. That's another thing kava is good for. It can help you. It definitely will help you get some deep rest. You'll notice that at the end of a night of drinking kava, you'll sleep real good. That night, it gives you that deep sleep.
Yeah, we'll put a link to the Yogi Tea in the description too, if you feel like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Do you have any shout outs? You want to big up anything?
Yeah, shout out my homie Teak, who runs Spice of India in Modesto. If you need kava, you should go there. And if you're in the Central Valley in Modesto, he has it. I have a bag of his kava right now. And if you're in Sac, go to Santos Market. I'm just gonna shout out all my people.
Go for it.
Where else? What do we got in the Bay? I don't know. There's all kinds of places in the Bay you could go to and get kava. But yeah, shout out to the Fijians, who taught our people how to drink kava. I just want to make an explicit note about that too, that I'm Indo-Fijian, so my folks are Indian immigrants to Fiji, and that's where we picked up the practice of drinking kava from the indigenous Fijians there. And it's just our cultures have a lot of enmeshments, and this is one of them, one way that we meshed. And so we drink kava. It's for me growing up, it was like something your uncle might have, and you might just have a sip of it if you're lucky. So yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the conversation.
And peace out.
Word. Peace.
And that's that. Make sure to check out the comments to see if there have been any corrections after this was posted, and if we got something wrong, tell us. You can check out the links we discussed in the podcast, as well as links to Khan's music in the description.